Hello and welcome back to the Frontline Security Podcast. Now with me today is an incredible woman doing incredible things, not just in the UK, but across the globe for public safety. It's Dawn Dines, the CEO and founder of Stamp Out Spiking. And today we're going to be talking all about spiking. Common ways people can get spiked, all about Dawn's fantastic charity, and the ways that security professionals can help prevent and deter spiking in their venues. Here's what's coming up.
Over 97% of victims didn't report getting spiked to the police. And then they've got to go out in a pub and stand there and think, was it you? Was it you? I've had reports of people being spiked at a funeral, a cricket match. The only reason that they caught the perpetrator is because a young child, like about 2 years old, went up and tried to take one of the cakes. For those men and women that I've spoken to over the years that have got no justice, this is why I'm doing this work.
What are the most common ways that we're seeing at the minute that people are being spiked? So Dawn, first of all, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Carl Randall, for having me.
Yeah, and as I mentioned there, you are doing incredible things for public safety across the globe, and it's all to do with spiking.
It is, yes, to protect, educate and campaign to make sure that we get updates in the law, we safeguard as many people as we possibly can, because these are like invisible crimes that are happening. They really are.
Yeah, spiking, it's been around for years, and it's still a huge issue now. And I mentioned there that you're campaigning for spiking all across the globe, but let's focus on the UK. So in terms of the UK, how common is spiking still, especially now?
Well, spiking has always been a terrible crime. And I believe that because social media wasn't around, then people were just not learning about it. And now we've got such brave victims that have been putting these videos out that have gone viral. And I don't know if you saw one with a girl called Millie, and she had like a claw-like grip and her jaw was swinging from side to side. And, you know, how brave was her mum to share that publicly? And we've had other videos of people down in my neck of the woods in Bristol where somebody's come up and they put their arms around some girls and you can see him spiking a drink and they've caught it in the video. So because of these people being so brave, it's really helped me on my mission.
Yeah, and is it mainly females that are usually the targets for spiking?
It's not. You know, here at Stamp Out Spiking, I receive probably equal amount of testimonials from male and female. The only difference being is that the men will never come forward. And, you know, I remember going on to Crime Watch. I remember going to the Home Affairs when I was an expert witness at the Home Affairs Committee. And, you know, I asked loads of men, will you come on? And they were like, no, because they didn't want people to know about it. They felt embarrassed, ashamed. And funny enough, quite a few women do as well, because it's one of those crimes that you sort of blame yourself. It's the most horrible crimes because you're going out to have a good time, somebody poisons you, and then you can't remember what's happened to you. And it's just like invisible crime. I like to call them cowardly crimes because that's exactly what I feel the people are that are doing what the perpetrators are.
I saw recently the SIA released some stats saying it's 76% of spiking victims are females. But what you're saying there is basically it's around 50-50.
We believe it's probably about 60-40 from what we've learned.
And how many cases are we seeing like this year so far, for example?
Well, last year, the National Police Chief Council released that there was over 6,000 reports of spiking incidents. But a couple of years ago, we actually done a national survey and over 97% of victims didn't report getting spiked to the police. So that number could be way up around 100,000.
I mean, yeah, that's mad. There's that many unreported spiking cases. How do people report it? Is it just go straight to the police?
Yeah, well, some people don't want to for whatever reason. So, you know, we always say our recommendation is please report this to the police because then and only then are we going to get the true data of the actual, the realistic numbers of these crimes. But if people don't want to report it to the police, there's other things they can do. They can, if they were unfortunately sexually assaulted, they can go to something called a SARC, which is a sexual assault referral centre, and they can actually keep your samples for up to 2 years. So, if you are feeling confused and you've just been spiked and you don't know what to do, then you've got the choice. At least those samples have been taken. The other thing is, obviously, you can speak to us at Stamp Out Spiking. There's victim support. There's lots of organisations out there that can help male and females if they've been affected by these crimes.
Yeah. Now, in ways that people can be spiked, what are the most common ways that we're seeing at the minute that people are being spiked?
Right. Great question, Carl. And actually, do you know what? The number one spiker is actually people who love you and care about you, bizarrely. And it's normally extra alcohol. So people will stick in a double and think they're being kind, but actually that person, they might have to operate machinery. They might be pregnant. They might... there could be a multitude of reasons why they don't want more alcohol. And, alcohol is still a drug, even though it's a socially acceptable drug. So family and friends, that's the number one. So after the drink spiking, we always look at, the drugs that are used in drink spiking incidents. And we've been told that, most recently, the drug of choice on the street is ketamine, which leaves people going down something called a K-hole. And for any sort of recreational drug users out there that think that they are being given cocaine and then they're being given ketamine, we've got this terrible situation of this grey area where people are taking drugs knowingly, but they're given a different drug. And then that can lead into all sorts of trouble because then nobody's got a leg to stand on because they're doing something illegal, which is terrible. So the other forms of spiking, we've got drink spiking, there's vape spiking, which is absolutely dreadful right now. It's happening a lot in our high schools, which is terrible. So, and it's as easy as me saying, hey, Carl, do you want to try some of this blueberry vape? Boom, they've got you.
Yeah.
So, again, to any of your listeners out there, please never share a vape. It's just something that, not just the fact that someone else has had their lips around it as well. So do you really want to be puffing on something like that? So, and then we look at, we had those needle spiking incidents a few years ago. Luckily, that's only minuscule to the whole spiking sort of spectrum of these crimes. And there's food spiking. So, chocolate brownies, stuff like that. People have been putting in drugs into that. And my friend's dad actually got spiked at a wedding and he was 89 years old. And then his daughter-in-law was 63 years old and she collapsed. They thought she died. They couldn't really find a pulse and she'd ingested all of this cake. And her dad, who was 89, was violently sick, thank God. So most of the poison had sort of come out of his system. But, spiking can happen to anyone at any time in any place. And I think for anyone listening today, this is the most important thing that we really want to share. I've had reports of people being spiked at a funeral, a cricket match, house parties, festivals. It's not just happening in pubs and clubs.
Yeah, I mean, I can see it happening in pubs and maybe house parties, but a wedding or a funeral.
I know.
That's bizarre.
It is.
Did they find out what it was?
It was cannabis that was in these in these cakes, but they put so much in there that, my friend's dad was 89. I mean, sadly not with us any longer, but not because of that, because of old age. But, how terrible is that? And the only reason that they caught the perpetrator is because a young child, about 2 years old, went up and tried to take one of the cakes. And this man's come running over and gone, no. So that's how they knew who it was.
I think the big one that you touched on there is the number one, is the giving people doubles when they ask for a single.
Yeah.
Because, you see it all the time. People go out with their friends and they want to get the party started. They want everyone to feel good. So they will just maybe get a double or sneak an extra shot in there or something like that. And that is spiking.
It is spiking. And we need to be calling that out. We really do. And we got some resources on our website and it's all about I don't know if you've ever played it, Carl. Have you ever played the game Never Have I Ever?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, it's a nightmare, isn't it? Your partner never forgets your bloody answers, I tell you. But, got me in big trouble for years, that game. But we've done a play on that. So, like, never have I ever stuck a double in my mate's drink. Don't be a spiker. So it's, never ever would I distract someone. Never ever would I, share a vape. And, it's all about the different ways that spiking is currently taking place and how we can, just politely share that information, not go too far, like, oh my God, if you're a spiker, you're going to 10 years on the sex offenders register. It's like, hold on a minute, let's do it a little bit more subtly so that people can understand really the importance of why we're sharing these key safeguarding messages.
And what are some of the common signs to look for if something has been spiked? Let's start with drink spiking. So someone hands you a drink from the bar. Are there telltale signs that this drink has been tampered with?
Okay, now this is not going to happen in every situation, but what could happen is it could be excess fizzing, the ice could float to the bottom, there could be some sediment in the drink. But like I said, that doesn't happen every time. But, once these date rape drugs take effect, the first thing that I've spoken to like hundreds and hundreds of victims over this past 20 years while I've been trying to campaign against these spiking issues. And people have been telling me that your vision becomes really blurred, you feel really drunk really quickly, and you sort of have like an out-of-body experience. So if this does happen to you, you really need to get to a trusted member of staff or a trusted friend, and you need to tell them really quickly that you've been spiked and they need to keep you safe, because once these drugs take effect, you become compliant, you can't put up a fight, and then the worst thing that happens, obviously, is you're left with no memory. And that's probably why part of this reason that people aren't reporting spiking, because how do you go to the police and go, oh, I got spiked last night. What happened? Don't know. Where were you? Don't know. Who done it? Don't know. It's a really difficult thing. So that's why we believe that training is essential for anybody who works in the day and the nighttime economy, so that they know the typical signs and symptoms. They've got an immediate call to action on what to say and what to do, because, bar staff, security, street pastors, people who work in a restaurant, anybody really who's got an invested interest in public safety, they really need to be our eyes and ears on the ground so we can intercept these perpetrators when they're in the act.
And I know spiking it's been in the news quite a lot recently this week because it's anti-spiking week. Students are going back to university. So what advice would you give to students for helping to prevent themselves from being spiked or their friends?
Well, do you know what? The first conversation I would have is, what are you like when you've had too much to drink? So it's a really, you got a big bunch of students all moving in a house together, and they don't know what people act like when they've had too much to drink. So that would be one of my first conversations. Like, a few years ago, we put out some little videos about this, and we said, what are you like? And one of my colleagues talks to dustbins. I keep repeating myself all the time. People act in funny ways, don't they, when they've had too much to drink? Some people just want to eat, some people just want to go to sleep. So it'd be really great if students could have those conversations. And then the next thing is obviously cover your drinks. We've got StopTops now, that they're a sticky bit of foil that can go on top of a glass, and it's just going to stop an opportunist from easily being able to slip anything into your drink. So use those drink covers. If somebody offers to buy you a drink, go to the bar with them, watch it being poured. People say to me, oh, never accept a drink from a stranger. I'm like, well, that's terrible advice. Of course we can, gentlemen could buy me a drink anytime. So it would be great if you could just go to the bar with them. There's simple little things. And let's start looking out for each other. Why did everyone suddenly get so selfish? Like, people say, oh, look out for your mates. Actually, look out for everyone. If you see somebody doing something untoward to someone else, either tell that person, tell the security, tell the bar staff, so that we can, give them every chance to safeguard themselves.
And going back to the StopTops, I've seen quite a few clubs introduce these. But people can also buy them themselves, can't they?
Yes, yeah. You can go online to StopTops.com. We've also got some links, I believe, on Stamp Out Spiking, and we're putting them on Amazon. So they should be able to get them on a global scale.
Yeah, that's awesome. And again, going back to advice for students, what advice would you give to a student who maybe their friend or whoever they're out with is spiked, or you think they're spiked? What should be your immediate action?
Your immediate action is never to leave them. So, because the perpetrator might be there watching them, they might be ready to take them off. So never leave their side. Make sure that their airways are clear, obviously, just in case they got in trouble, especially if they've had too much to drink. Because this is something else that I just want to say is that these perpetrators that are going out there being like chemists on our streets, going around and spiking people, they don't know if the other person is on medication. They could end up killing someone. They don't know the size of them, for the amount of drugs that they're putting in their drinks. It's so dangerous. So if a friend or a loved one has been spiked, always stay with them. Make sure that they don't drink any more of the drink or smoke any of the vape or whatever it could have been. Tell the security to make sure that it gets recorded. If they're going in and out of consciousness, obviously straight to A&E.
I think a big thing that we need to get past as well is that people sometimes don't believe people if they say they've been spiked. They're just like, oh no, you were too drunk. But again, I think that's why having those conversations with your friends saying, this is what I'm usually like if I'm drunk. So then you can notice, okay, they're being a bit weird here. They're floppy, they're falling over a lot. We need to take action.
Definitely. And having those conversations is so important because, if you and I went out and we had too much to drink, we'd know, wouldn't we? Because, and you hang around when you're out with your friends and stuff like that. And, never leave your friends on their own. You know what I mean? There's got to be a bit of, especially in this day and age now, things seem to have, from when I was hanging around, I always used to go out to pubs and clubs on my own or travel around the world on my own. And, then you have to have a little bit more self-preservation. But nowadays, I just think that there's so many people out there that are trying to get one over on you that you've just got to be a little bit more alert. And when people keep saying to me about victim blaming, and I'm like, we've all got to be a bit responsible for our own personal safety. So I don't look at it as victim blaming. I look at it as let's just be a bit alert so that we're on the ball, so we notice what's going on. When we go out, like when I go into a place, I always have a look. I see where the exit is. I see who's on shift. I have a little look around just to familiarise myself with my surroundings. And I think that's good advice for anybody.
Now, we've touched on a little bit about Stamp Out Spiking, your charity, but let's go right to the beginning. So what made you first set up Stamp Out Spiking?
Right, okay. In 1989, somebody tried to spike my drink when I was in Australia, and I caught them in the act. And after that, a few years later, a friend and I were living in Mexico, and a tray of drinks got sent over. Again, the advice, watch it being poured. We didn't. We took the drinks, and I could just see in my peripheral vision that these guys were like laughing, and one of them was going like, and I looked down, there's some steps going down, and I thought, oh my God, they put something in our drinks. All the hairs on the back of my neck went up, and I said to my friend, right, we're off. Threw the money down, went back to our apartment, and we were, I think it was out cold for over 30 hours. So whatever they'd put in our drinks, number one, could have killed us. Number two, what could have happened to us at that time? I don't want to look down those horrible dark roads of like human trafficking and, there's some horrible things that you hear about and, people into the sex trade or whatever it could have been. It was a really frightening experience. And then when I came back to the UK, I started talking about it. And then people were saying to me, well, that's happened to me. And then guys were saying, yeah, that's happened to me. And just so many people that I spoke to that, when I do my training and I go around the country training people, I always ask, one of the first things, has anyone here been spiked? Hands up. I'd say between 10 and 30% normally in any room. And then does anyone know anyone who's been spiked? Over 50% people put their hands up. So it just goes to show how prevalent these crimes really are.
Yeah. And since starting the charity to now, what progress do you think that you've made?
Oh, another great question, Carl Randall. Do you know what? Since I started it, I've got to say that I've got 5 cross-political parties who all agreed that we need the law to be updated. You know, they've turned around and said to me that it's antiquated legislation that needs to be updated. We know that it was mentioned in the King's speech. It's just been mentioned by Yvette Cooper yesterday at the Labour Party conference. So it looks like it is going to go ahead. Obviously, I'm not going to take my foot off the pedal until it is. We started that campaign years ago. I've got an international day that's now been recognised on the 15th of July because I keep doing more and more work with different countries. And so making awareness and raising awareness with them. The Security Industry Authority are now going to make it compulsory. So it's got to be mandatory training for the door security, which is, an amazing step forward. I believe that bar staff and street pastors, the government really needs to be putting some funding in, especially if we don't receive any core funding at Stamp Out Spiking. And so we got to beg, borrow and steal for every penny. So it'd be lovely if they would, give us some core funding so that my small team can carry on the work that we're doing. And I've trained thousands of people on these issues and given away thousands of the protective drink covers. So it's just been phenomenal. The things that the tick boxes that I've managed to do up to date it's blown me away, to be honest.
Yeah, it's incredible. And you mentioned there about updating the current law. So what is the current law around spiking and what are we trying to change?
So we've got Offence Against the Persons Act written in 1861, but that shows that spiking should have been done by malicious intent, which is something really hard to prove. We've also got, if there's a sexual assault, obviously, then that's another way. So the reason why, by the way, that I want this law updated is because I contacted every police force throughout the country, and there's 42 or 43 police forces. I asked for their freedom of information data so I could find out the true extent of these crimes. And basically, they came back and said it was virtually impossible because it would be spiking, poisoning with obnoxious substance, sexual assault. And because they don't double code, it's really difficult because that higher charge is the one that will stick within the police forces or the one that they can then get that data from. So that's how it all came about. And I was like, well, isn't there a better way that we can record these crimes? And because there's not a national way, every police force does it in a different way. It was virtually impossible to find out. So that is why I thought, right, we need some law updates. Then we need education to be shared, because the more education that we share, the better chance we've got of catching people. At the moment, we got less than 2% conviction rate. I mean, how bad is that?
And you mentioned before about training people about the effects of spiking, all about spiking, and how the SIA are now adopting it and security professionals, it'll be taught to them. We'll move on to that in a second, but you also have your own training course, don't you?
Yes, we do, yeah. We've been going in and we've been training up, like I said, bar staff, security staff, licensing officers, police officers. And it's brilliant to have that collective mix in the room, to be honest with you, because then, people will say, well, get them a taxi home. And the taxi driver's like, I'm not going to have a girl who's unconscious in my cab. You get the real learnings when you get all those people in the room at the same time. And that for us is key, because it's okay saying, oh, let's go and train people on this. But unless people are all there working together for a common purpose, then it's just going to be a tick box exercise. And that's something we definitely don't want.
Yeah. So, I mean, if anyone does want to further their knowledge and training in spiking, we'll put a link to Dawn's course from the Stamp Out Spiking charity in the comment section below. We mentioned there about security professionals now being trained in spiking. I think this includes methods that people do spiking, basically what we've talked about here, signs to look out for. But how important do you think it is that security professionals are aware of all this?
Do you know what? The amount of people that I've had over these past 20 years that have said to me, I was thrown outside. I was taken outside. And, that's not the door security being horrible. That for me is just lack of education. They're thinking, oh, they've had too much to drink. So, people are scared they're going to lose their licenses. So we really feel that this key education is how important is it? It's going to be the difference between potentially somebody getting home safely or could be gang raped. It is that important. And because you are the frontline service providers and you're going to be there before the police get there, the bar staff are normally busy. So it's probably going to be that the SIA, by taking on this training, it's going to be saving men and women's lives because, what's going to happen with these crimes, like you just imagine if you've been taken off and you've been sexually assaulted, you've been, some of the women that I speak to, I'm sorry to get dark here, but I feel I have to, that they are vaginally raped, they're anally raped. They don't know how many people have raped them. And then that young woman, that girl, even men, straight males anally raped. How dreadful is that? And then they don't know who's done it to them. And then they've got to go out in a pub and stand there and think, was it you? Was it you? It's like the mental health repercussions of these crimes, I just can't explain to you. It's just absolutely disgusting. And I think when people keep saying to me, Dawn, why are you so bloody persistent? Why have you carried on? Like, what is it? And I'll tell you exactly what it is, Carl. It's for those men and women that I've spoken to over the years that have got no justice. And, that girl who's crying in my arms saying to me, oh, God, I never knew, who done it. My mum and dad didn't believe me. My boyfriend didn't believe me. For those little kids, this is why I'm doing this work. It really is.
Yeah. And what advice or what telltale signs would you say there are to the likes of door supervisors if spiking is happening in the venue? Because, quite a common one is somebody leaving with someone who's really drunk and they seem not drunk at all.
Yeah. So we've designed this course right around all of these issues you're just discussing now. Like, I've worked in the bar and I've worked looking out for people as well at the same time in different pubs and clubs over the years. And, if somebody walks in and within 20 minutes, they can't really walk very well and someone else is taking them out the door, we need to be questioning this. Why are they not leaving with the people that they've come in with? What has happened to them within that short amount of time? So there are telltale signs and there's an easy way for you to go up and challenge this as well. Oh, is she okay? Oh, I don't think she's all right. Let me just take her off to one side. Just take them away from the perpetrator. It's an easy thing to do because you can say, oh, no, this is on my watch. You know what I mean? I want to make sure she's safe before she leaves. Oh, what is her name? What, it's just easy ways. And if that is a perpetrator, they're probably not going to know what that lady's name is or what the gentleman's name is. So there's certain things that people can do just to make it not confrontational, because that's the last thing we want to do, but just to safeguard.
Yeah. A big campaign that I've seen in pubs and stuff over the past, year or two is the Ask for Angela campaign as well.
Yes.
That's a fantastic one where
Brilliant.
If you think somebody if someone's harassing you or you don't feel safe, you can ask the bar staff for Angela.
Yeah.
And they can get the security.
So that's Hayley Crawford, a policewoman that, do you know what? It took me about 3 years to find out who she was. I kept saying to people, who designed Ask for Angela? Who owns it? Who designed it? Who thought of it? And it took me years. And then I tracked her down at a pub watch conference of all places. And I didn't stalk her. That's not the right word. But I saw her walk off to the loo and I ran after her. And then I was waiting for her to come out. And I was like, oh my God, are you Hayley Crawford? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, I've been waiting to meet you for years. I'm your number one fan. And she was like, Dawn, the reason why I set it up is because it doesn't need any training. And what a perfect thing to do. I wish I could do that with a spiking. I spoke to her at length about it. I said, what can I do? She said, oh, look, yours needs training, I'm afraid. But Ask for Angela, all you got to do is stick a poster up in the pub and make sure all your staff are aware. Just, anybody comes up, ask for Angela, just take them to a safe place. What a brilliant initiative.
Fantastic. And have you got any other top tips for the the likes of door supervisors?
I would say please check out our website. You know, if you've got some StopTops you can pop in your pocket to hand out to men and women when they're coming in the pubs and clubs, that would be great. Speak to the venues that you're working at. Again, we got lots of resources showing zero tolerance on spiking issues. We've got lots of different posters we can hand out. We've got T-shirts. We've got training, you know, everything that you are possibly ever going to need to safeguard against these crimes. I think, well, hopefully we've thought of. So, and for anybody out there that runs a security company, we've got SCORM files now that you can get from us. So we just want everybody to be trained up so that there are eyes and ears on the ground to stop these perpetrators.
I think this all just highlights the role in which like security professionals do play and how important they are. Because we always say they're usually the first people to respond to any scene. So it just highlights how important security professionals are. And we need more, really, in bars, in clubs. These venues need to be upping the security to help stop spiking going on.
Yeah, they really do. You know, and I'm seeing more women joining security now. You know, I went to the Security Women Awards recently a few weeks ago, and it was great to be there to see all the women being celebrated for all their work. And, you know, men and women have different ways of obviously going up and speaking to people. And the more women that we can get working in security has got to be a good thing.
Well, Dawn, it's been absolutely fantastic. And Stamp Out Spiking's doing absolutely incredible work. But one final question.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give to somebody who thinks they've been spiked, but they're not sure whether to report it or not?
I would say, please report it to the police, because then we're going to get a clear picture of how prevalent these crimes are. If you don't want to report it to the police, please go onto our website. We've got a national survey that we're running called The Victim's Journey. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to find out where we're letting victims down on what part of their journey. Was it because they didn't report it to the police? Was it because the hospital didn't take samples? Why? And with that evidence, I'm going to be able to then have that data to go back to the government and show them exactly how we're letting victims down.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much.
Thanks, Carl.